if someone didn't hear the backstory, would think, what a wanker.
I promise not to make you sound like a wanker in the intro.
It's my personal development journey really started in 2014 after the death of my cousin. And we'll go into all the story behind it. But where I'm at now is in a state of what I call flow, right? We've talked about flow on my podcast. Flow being a state of peaceful, purposeful progress. So this state of alignment where you feel you're exactly where you want to be, you're doing exactly what you want to do, you're excited for the future, but you also love the present. And it's a place of resilience and extreme power, because I think I don't really have fears anymore. And I think I am able to live in a state of real healed love and gratitude, and where I love every day. As I said, the death of my cousin, and I had a very extreme, actually two near death experiences, really changed my perception on, what life is all about. And for me, it was about this concept of living in the present. And in fact, by being in that state, creating this magical state of flow where your dreams come closer to you the more that you are yourself and the more aligned that you are. So as I said, it probably sounds like a bit of a wanker's answer, I think, but the work that it's been to get there, or get here being now, has been an absolute crazy ride. And I think when eventually, when you get over a lot of and healing and you start to shift a lot of these internal things, life does become more beautiful. So for me, that's where I am now. I hope that's like an okay answer.
I don't think there's any un-okay answers. It's interesting because now it's been a few years I've done this, and I've interviewed a few people who have had near-death experiences, very traumatic experiences, very violating experiences. And every single one of them has been like what you say, that I believe life is meant to be amazing, meant to be beautiful, in spite of the fact that they've been put in these horrific and very difficult situations. And I just think that it's the thing where it frames what comes next. It frames how you go forward. And I know it's really hard for people listening maybe that haven't had that, or maybe had the opposite reaction where they just extreme depression, which can also happen. I've been there.
Yeah.
But it is this idea of, like you said, when you of constantly trying to control what tomorrow is and how it's going to be, but you keep in mind what you're creating, that comes to you anyways. And so I'd love to speak to you a little bit more about that journey, because not everyone listening, knows how you got there.
I'll give some background to my whole story without kind of making it, War and Peace length of answer. In 1998, my parents launched the first online business network. So we grew up, in this internet world. Both of our parents were internet entrepreneurs, which is normal now. But like in 1998, that was not normal, right? But they were really real pioneers in their industry. So what that meant was we as a family went on this entrepreneurial journey full of highs and lows, right? Like lots of highs and lots of lows and lots of, ultimately stress. Now I can reflect on this and understand that there was a lot of stress living in my body. And also, from a young age was very interested in making money. I was always me and my family joke as a want monster, which is kind of like, a term that Robbie Williams uses in his documentary, a want monster, sort of like that addict mentality of more, more, just from a young age, just more money, more this, more that, that addictive mindset. So I was grew up with this, lots of love, lots of joy, but also stress and this kind of want, dream, big dreams, big ambition type thing. So I then got into my kind of later teens, early 20s, my family just got hit with a lot of different adversity. So as I said, like my cousin died, we went through quite a lot of different deaths in the family. And when I was 23, I went on holiday to visit friends. And whilst I was there, was kidnapped and raped. And when I got back from there, my whole life had changed. Everything had changed. Vicky dying, first of all, had changed my perception on the world. It had removed this veil of people can die. She died really suddenly, 2 months after diagnosis. And then I had then seen this evil in the world. Like you see it on TV, you hear about it in your history lesson, but I've now seen it in my life. And it just completely changed everything. It changed the perspective. It was like everything went from color to black and white. Everything changed in my perspective. And I was eventually diagnosed with PTSD and started drinking more. And at 25 years old, I was like not on a good path. I was just like, I don't think this is what life is supposed to be about. Like, I don't think this is why I lived in that car. I don't think this is what Vicky would want for me. I don't think this is it. And I think I was quite young to have that almost like midlife crisis of like, what is this all about? So I quit my job and moved over to Bali, and I had like a laptop and £5,000, which I thought was loads of money. It is not. It is not very much money to move to another country where you have no visa, no job, and nowhere to live. But I just knew I needed to get out and go, and just, I was drinking and it was just all a mess. And it was just like, is this who I am? Is that who I am? Or is there more to Hannah? Like, is there more light in this darkness? And I went to Bali, and, lots of different experiences over there. It definitely wasn't a, eat, pray, love, beautiful moment. I had a lot of really dark moments because I had to come really face to face with my demons and really heal from. I quit drinking when I was in Bali after a really bad accident. I have a nice scar on my shoulder to remind me of that. And I then quit drinking. And then obviously once you stop drinking and you stop numbing yourself from these challenges and this pain, you then have to face it. And that's when I started healing and finding my purpose and finding my flow and finding what really lit me up. And that really started the next, I would say, kind of like 6 year journey that really leads me to here, of knowing who I was, knowing what I wanted, being able to define what success was to me, but then having to go through all the other blockers. And I've had so much therapy, 3.5 years of therapy, and so much personal development, and so many days where I wanted to give up, and so much failure in business, and awful times in relationships, and just loads of challenge, but always with this long-term goal of, I know there is a place of peace. I don't have a massive house and a massive car, but what I do have to me is so much more valuable, and a place that most people don't reach because they think that happiness is there. And I think I just learned young that there was no there.
I think that it is, the more I've heard you speak in the past and your story and giving so much context to it, it's when you are faced with that kind of trauma, and it's hard, right? Because it's years ago, but still there's like different ways that it makes you think and move and decide. And I appreciate so much that you have talked about your experience, but all that you're giving it new lenses for how you are today, that's defining you, right? You have a totally different life now, a different perspective. And I think that that's something that's really hard, because a lot of times when we're in that trauma, we have incidents that are horrific like that. People want to put you in that box forever and view it that way. And you like can't move into that next level of a story and say, yes, this happened, but because of this, I am doing this now. This is who I am now. I'm not still that story. There's a different narrative. And there's so much to speak about in terms of like controlling your inner narrative, controlling what other people tell you should be, what success is. You talk about all of this stuff on your shows as well, I know.
When you go through this kind of like sexual trauma, very often it creates shame. David Hawkins identified these different every emotion has a vibration, right? So you have high vibrational emotions and low vibrational emotions. Shame is the lowest vibrational emotion that exists. It is the lowest vibration, below guilt, below grief, below anger. Shame is at the lowest point. And shame can only really exist in the dark. And I remember after it happened, and, everyone is saying to me, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And I'm like, then why is it so difficult for me to talk about? Why is the word rape such a secret? And what I learned was how many other people, relatives of mine, friends of mine, girlfriends of friends of mine, who would share that they had had similar experiences, but they hadn't told anyone. I thought, makes no sense. It's something that they did, and you're holding it and you're carrying it. So I did a lot of work to heal from it. And like, I never want to brush over what that looked like, because it did not look good. Like the drinking, existential pain and dread, and the not being able to get out of bed, the anger, all of it. Like, I experienced all of that wheel of emotions, like I really went through it. But I felt like those men had taken something, but they weren't going to take everything. They could just, they could just have that moment. They weren't going to have any more of my life. And I just always looked to other people who had overcome traumas and was inspired by them. So people in my own family, famous people that had overcome traumas. And I really was inspired, unbelievably helped by people who will have no idea who I am, who I read their book or I listened to their podcast or I saw a post. And at my darkest time, it gave me hope. When I started to see that some of the most incredible people in this world had been through the most amount of shit, I started to think like, maybe this could be power. Maybe this could be strength. Maybe this could make me fearless. And, if we look at life as love and fear, right? Living in an energy of love and growth and flow and peace and whatever you want to call it, purpose. And you look at it living in this place of like fear and dread and anxiety and depression. If we look at it just as straightforward as love and fear, to live your best life in the high vibrational love state, you need to remove as much fear as possible. The more fears you can remove and let go of and process, you become unstoppable. I mean, you literally become unstoppable. If nothing scares you, you're unstoppable, right? So these dark, dark times, if we can overcome them, and as I said, I don't underestimate how much that takes, but if we can believe that we can overcome them, we can remove so much fear in such an intense time that other people never remove because they don't have a reason to. I'm not grateful for that event, but I'm grateful for the fact that I was able to use it as a way of becoming fearless, because that's what's going to give me the most incredible next however many years, and my children, and etc., etc. And when you do look at this world, the people that do tend to live the best lives, live in flow, tend to have overcome something, right?
I don't want to say it polishes you because that's not the right word, but it kind of opens up layers that you cannot touch in other ways, because it requires such a profound amount of like will and self-awareness to do it otherwise, if it's through trauma or it's not through anything that's happened that way. But I also feel like for you, what you embody and what I see other people similarly, fear comes with inaction. When you don't act and you stay still or you stay in those thoughts, that's when fear consumes you the most. So it's, can you move through either mentally, or can you move through with what you physically do? And I don't mean like in the broy way of bulldozing to the next goal or the next milestone, but in the way of acknowledging it, being aware of it, especially in the case of shame, like you said, putting some light on it. It might be to the whole world, but even just to the people who love and know you the most, because I think almost everyone listening, especially I mentioned to you, mostly it's women, there's some shameful thing that you're hiding, that you feel embarrassed about, or that you don't feel comfortable to reveal. And I just think it's very therapeutic to hear someone else share their story around it.
I think for me, because my story was so extreme, I couldn't suppress it, right? Smaller things we can suppress. So most of us just suppress pain. Suppress, don't feel it. But what happens is when you do that is it drives your life, right? Because you don't rise to the level of your dreams and your potential. You fall to the level of your self-worth and your beliefs about the world. Now, when I feel a blocker come up, and like I have this joke with my therapist, I have a very close relationship with my therapist, right? I've seen her every week for 3.5 years. And like, I mean, look how close we are just from this conversation. Imagine spending that much time with me. I'm like, like, let's find the blocker. I'm excited by it because I'm like, there's more elevation, there's more light, there's more joy on the other side if I find other blockers. But the reason it builds up is because we don't let it move, so it gets stuck. And for me, I'm like, energy in motion, like, let's keep it moving, and then it won't get stuck. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. But yeah, I just find it so exciting because I think it's this, we live in the era of empowerment, right? The internet is giving us an opportunity to be empowered in a way that we never were.
The nice thing is you can hear stories thousands of times like this on a podcast, and it starts to really infiltrate your being, and you start to feel that message, where before it might have been a bit harder because, people are listening to like audio tapes, so different now. But it's also the case of you have to curate a lot better what goes into your mind now, because there's so much crap And there's so many triggers for self-esteem, self-worth, for constant comparison. All of this stuff can also come up too because of the digital world we live in. And especially like you, like me, if we're working online, it's even more in your face and all the time. So I see like both sides of it. And it's kind of like, how do you direct that?
You don't understand the world enough to be exposed to it. So I get it. I think it's really a victim mindset, to be honest, because, water can drown you. It can save your life. Fire can burn you alive or keep you warm so you don't freeze to death. Nothing in life is black and white. And I think with the internet and social media, either it uses you or you learn to use it. But the thing is, we all come with it with this really big victim mindset of like, oh, I'm being triggered because this person is. If you're being triggered, go and look at the trigger, right? Like the trigger is the gift. The trigger is the sign that there is something unhealed in you. If you're scrolling on social media and the fact that this person has got this or this person achieved this and you're being triggered, you have a wound inside of you that needs healing. And it's not about that person. It's about you, right? Some of the best work that I've done in therapy has been created through triggers, either in relationships or on social media.
I understand, but I want to put a little caveat here because I think it's really important to mention this, is that accelerating your personal growth journey that way requires that you are self-aware of what those triggers are. And if you're not self-aware of them, or if you like feel them and they come up and you're not going in and looking at this, okay, I'm triggered because this person has this and it means I value this, and you continue to stay in that and you don't really understand it, for me, I don't think you should stay there. I think you should go away, work on it, because it's almost like, for me, healed, fine, go back and like it's a great place to be. But I think like it's almost as if saying to someone who, let's say, you have had horrific like wounds from dating and relationships, and then you go back in on Tinder, that's not the place for you to be, right? You are not at a level to do it.
And you're right, you have to have the self-awareness to go and process it. But if you're being triggered by social media, you're also being triggered offline. It's not only social media that's triggering you, it's just that social media gets all the blame. And I think it just comes down to this. I'm very passionate about the concept of empowerment, right? Moving from victim mindset to empowered mindset, because it is the only way out of the darkness, right? You have to take full responsibility for everything in your life, which is shit. And that can sound really dark, right? Like that can sound blaming and self-shaming. I don't mean it from that point of view, but if you don't believe you have any control over the things that happen to you or the life that you live, how can you have any control over the future of it? That enabled me to take some control over that situation and not live in a world of fear of, oh, every time I leave my house, this thing is going to happen again, right? Like ex-boyfriend cheats on me, not that one, the one before. Okay, my boyfriend, I've had 2 boyfriends cheat on me. Okay, why did that happen? Okay, how can I learn from that? Why going for those men? Low self-worth. Deal with that. And I think it sounds harsh, but it is saying, where can I take responsibility for this in my life?
I think with that point in particular is very important, because you think that your perspective is reality and it's not. It's a tiny sliver in a dark room of light, and you just don't see the rest of the stuff around you. It's also, I'm wondering, like, one of the things you said that really stuck with me related to everything we've discussed here is that it comes back to this identifying patterns. If you notice that you are doing something, attracting someone again and again and again, then yes, the thing is not the issue. There's something you're doing, your behavior, your perspective. I loved when you said if you're triggered online, you're probably triggered offline too. Absolutely. If you're triggered by comparison by someone you see, probably there's someone in your real life that you also are envious of or jealous of.
I was the queen of comparison and jealousy. Like that was one of the things that took me the longest to heal in therapy. When somebody would die, everyone would upload a Facebook picture with them, with the person. Do you remember that? Like trying to find photos with me and Vicky. I don't have any because Vicky was really slim and I was really jealous. So I never wanted to be in pictures with her. She's dead and I have no pictures. Right? And like that realization was really the start of my personal development journey.
There's nothing like that, is there? When the moments of life just shove in your face these smaller concerns that we have, that we build up in our minds so much, and they show you how much they don't matter.
I could not believe it. And what's so crazy is because I was so early on my personal development journey that I thought the solution was to go and lose weight.
Yeah. We talked about this on your episode too. So I will mention to link up with that because I know you had quite a journey with body image. And I think it's something that's extremely important for people to hear because this is all tied together, right? Like all of this stuff, all of this self-esteem, all of this personal growth, there's so many layers of it.
And you know what I think is so interesting is I think it's very often started with the right intentions and then it goes down the other way, because as women we're so programmed to believe that if we had a perfect body everything in life would be okay. And it's like that was where my journey started. Every diet of trying to find the magic place where it works, and ultimately until you've healed the roots of your self-worth and you really love who you are, it doesn't really necessarily matter what the outside looks like.
Before you keep on this one, because I want to make sure that we touch on one point you said that I don't know if people caught, and I think it's really important.
Because I'm sort of all over the place now.
I mean, like, this is, guys, this is why Hannah has her own show. You need to listen. There's an episode.
I know, it's because there's so many parts of it all, isn't there? Like, there's not just one magic bullet, there's not one part.
The one you said, though, that I think is really important and it ties into all of this is when you're talking about the body image, you said, and I hope people heard, that it comes back to the self-worth. And it really is this case of when people go on the diet or they get the results, and that feels like it's changing your life, what you're getting is validation. It's not self-worth. And we confuse them in almost the same way that we confuse infatuation and love, where you get the infatuation and you're like, oh, this is so amazing. But actually it's toxic. It's not what you actually are looking for. You're looking for love. But for someone who hasn't yet learned the difference or what it feels like, it's very difficult to convince them otherwise. And I see this, I don't do this work anymore, but over the years, people in wellness, that they are chasing self-worth, but they are confusing it with external validation. And until you learn that those are not the same thing, you're going to forever believe that the diet is the answer and what we're saying doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, that was really powerful, what you just said there about the validation, the external validation. It's an empty, it's an empty vessel. But ultimately, you're right. Like, you're looking outside of yourself. I mean, we're all taught to look outside of ourselves and not to look in, because the thing is when you look in, you find all the darkness and the pain and all of these things that we've talked about on this podcast, all the different aspects, right? Not an easy path to heal the inside, but if you can do it, you get to live a life which it's an experience that I didn't know existed, and it's an experience I have not seen really in others. My message to those that are healing, it's worth it. Just keep going. My body is not better than it was all these years, but now I love my body, right? Because it's got nothing to do with my body. It's got nothing to do with it, because it was always to do with me and what I perceived as valuable and what I perceived as important. And now I'm detached from so many of those things. I think that's my message, is that it's worth it, and keep going and keep listening to amazing podcasts like this one.
I love it. Amazing last words. I love that, because when you're talking about this life that you wake up to and you enjoy, I think a lot of times people see it as a creation process, and it definitely is. But it's also this idea of like your natural state is not to compare, is not to feel fear all the time, is not to be frustrated. It is this kind of just contentment
and alignment.
Alignment. Each year we're adding something extra to it that is weighing us down. And so it's almost like you're taking away the stuff, you're detaching, as you said, you're aligning again for something that is already there and has been there, but we just get a little bit off path. And I love, like, your story is such a beautiful example of that, of what happens when you realign, what happens when you detach, what happens when you really look inside and take a train through the darkness. And I know people want to know more, because Hannah has so many beautiful episodes and so many great conversations. This is just like a tiny sneak peek at it. So where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram. Obviously, we've talked about avoiding social. If you want to avoid social media, then I would say join my newsletter. That would be my thing. So I send 2 emails a week. Performermode.com. That's all you need to go to. Performermode.com. Put your email in. I send 2 emails a week. Performer mode is to live in flow, right? To live in performer mode, not achiever mode or dreamer mode. We've talked a lot about achiever mode in this episode, which is that excessive control place. Performer mode is this balanced state of flow.
Amazing. We'll keep it in the show notes, and please check out Hannah's podcast, find her on Instagram. You'll get a lot more every single time. It really makes you think and explore a bit more in your personal growth. So thank you for being here.